Strategic Plan Strategy Huddle, M3's take on the Wall Street Journal article.
Journal article, which is pretty interesting that we see it was actually published by one of the hallmark organizations in the U.S. that comes up with business thoughts, but this article came out at the end of January. I forget the exact date, 28th, 25th. But the title is Strategic Plans Lose Favor, Slump Showed Bosses Value Flexibility, Quick Decisions. So I've got a little thought, when I looked at that title. You want to go on to the next slide? When I looked at that title, it says, okay, if strategic plans are losing favor, okay, in other words, if they're going down, it implies that something else must be gaining favor. If strategic planning is losing in these turbulent times, what's gaining favor? So Ryan's going to do a little polling on the side, and it's just type stuff in, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on. But if strategic planning is losing favor, what business practice is taking its place? What do you think organizations should be using to help out in these times and find some kind of compass to make through these turbulent times? We'll talk about that as we roll through this. The article, thanks Ryan, we sent it out. There's a link to it. It's still alive at the Wall Street Journal. And there's obviously a number of topics and so forth in there, but I just pulled out two primary issues. The reason I did that is because of, and you'll see as we go through this, who wrote them and who said this. So I wanted just to highlight two of them. We could probably talk about a whole bunch more of them. But there was numerous comments that were attached to this article, and that helped summarize things. And then also that the Wall Street Journal didn't just a week or so ago published another letter to the editor, so they actually published it versus just a comment. So this little article did stir up a lot of thoughts and so forth. So the first issue that I want to talk about here and get folks' feedback is this: that the statement came from Walt Schill, who's the head of a North American consulting practice of Accenture. I mean, this is a large organization, as we all know, rolled out of Arthur Andersen, who is no longer, and it says, Walt Schill, head of North American Management Consulting Practice for Accenture Limited, is even more blunt. Strategy as we knew it is dead. He contends that it's dead. So the point that I'm making with this, if this is really dead, then what's replacing it? And then I go back to kind of my roots in old Michael Porter, that strategy guru out of Harvard and so forth. There's an HBR article in 1996, and I just pulled one sentence out of it. It says, competitive strategy is about being different. It means deliberately choosing to perform activities differently or to perform different activities than rivals to deliver a unique mix of value. And there's three words in there that keep popping out to me, like the word different. Strategy is about being different. And it's always going to be. I don't know how we can be dead. I don't know how that isn't going to continue forward. And we have to choose, just like what Spartan does. They choose to participate with their customers and take that thought and then be different to perform their services for them that will then provide value, which is the third word. So to me, these words are not dead. They're very much alive. So I'm a little taken back by his statement as we knew it, because I suspect in what I see and what we see in all our practices, principles are going to continue to roll forward no matter how turbulent times are. So to continue on with this issue, the rest of Art Schill's statement says he contends that the strategy is dead. Corporate clients decided that increased flexibility and accelerated decision-making are much more important than simply predicting the future. And so I'm looking at that and talking to clients and talking to people and reading the blog posts and the comments and so forth about it, and I'm just at a loss to why strategic planning doesn't provide flexibility, and it doesn't provide accelerated decision making. I threw a couple of points underneath here. What we find is that it's definitely always about implementation and execution ability of the organization. So if we're doing that, then we're able to participate in being more agile, be more flexible. We can make accelerated decisions. So if we're doing the strategic planning process well and we're not dead, we're going to have the increased flexibility. The second point is definitely about instilling a corporate culture that embraces strategic change and performance. We find that time and time again that the culture is definitely essential, and we'll find at Spartan, and I go back to them because I've talked to them a bunch of times on the phone. They've got so many of their people from around the United States who participate in this training, and their culture is about embracing change, or the culture is embracing things that come across their desk from the customers and be able to react to those as it happens. And they're not made in granite. And so strategy's always been about that. And then finally, it's definitely not about simply predicting the future. And I never knew that strategic planning was about that. Just predicting the future and holding on and hoping for the best. We find time and time again that if you're not trying to predict the future, or trying to do some kind of forecasting and trending, then you really get caught short. So, like, again, going back to Spartan, is if we're talking to our customers and we're seeing what they want, we're looking at these driver questions, and as they start changing, we are able then to, quote, predict how to provide value to them. So, strategic planning is not dead. I'm sorry to say that. Walt Schill, even though he does have a prominent position. So the second issue is about, if I read the whole statement, which is a leading sentence in that, and again, this is from the two Wall Street Journal writers, they're basically saying is during recession, as business forecasts based on seemingly plausible swings in sales smack up against reality, executives discovered that strategic planning doesn't always work. And we always smack up against reality. None of us have a crystal ball. And if we're not looking at the future and trying to understand where we're headed, we're going to get caught flat-footed. So what I did is these points I've got underneath it, with the true, I pulled some of the blog posts forward so we could look at those. And also in the article, we talk about static 5-year strategic plans don't always work. And I couldn't wholeheartedly more agree. I think everybody participating in this call would say that. We know strategic plans are not static. They're all about execution, as we said in the first issue. And as we move forward, we embrace the change, and we pick up things and we change. So they're not etched in granite and not stuck up on it. And I see that so many times when in our consulting work and so forth, people have these 5-year plans. They call them 5-year plans, like they're going to accomplish it. Well, it's a 5-year plan. We just plan 5 years out, and we keep changing every 3, 6, 9 months and so forth as issues pop up. And the point that I see with the second one, true, rate of change and the width of validity is much wider and faster. That comes out of another blog post. The world that we all exist in business, whether it be in Spartan in providing temporary staffing, the validity of change, business is bouncing up and down, and Spartan has to be really nimble to be able to provide the customers, their customers, the staffing, temporary staffing employees that they need. So the rate of change is faster. We're in a global business, and we all have to be prepared. So strategic planning is critical to have. And the next two are very similar in nature. Good businesses don't change strategies every month. Strategy plan is a dynamic, evolving, living thing. And the way I want to wrap those 2 points up is out of the letter to the editor that the Wall Street Journal published, and it says, The writer was a fellow out of Allen, Texas. He said, "I'm sure Apple hasn't changed its strategic plan to be the best in consumer technology, nor has Walmart moved away from a strategic plan of being the most cost-competitive and outstanding distributor of consumer goods, even with the Great Recession." So, turbulent times require a plan. Turbulent times require looking into the future and making the shifts as we encourage and find them, every month or 90 days or whatever. Tactics change. So I'd like to wrap this up a little bit, and geez, I'm sorry that if you can't see this too well, but the point I'm trying to make with this is this comes from BAIN. Again, they've been doing a study on the top 25 management tools that have been in place since the early 90s, and since 1996, strategic planning had been the #1 tool up until 2008. But it still is the #1 management tool with the highest satisfaction. You'll see the mean there is 4.01. The interesting takeaway from this one is that if we would compare the 09 to the 08, the percentage of usage, we'll find that across the board that companies backed off on all their planning processes, all their tools. Strategic planning usage fell from 88% to 67%. So tying this whole thing together, I guess we'd have to say that the Wall Street Journal article was true in one standpoint, that in fact that strategic planning did fall from favor. People quit using it. What happened in the recession, the Great Recession, is that a lot of companies lost focus, a lot of companies lost their direction, and they started reacting day after day, time after time. And the studies that we've done, we've found that on the average, most companies over this last period of time have been experiencing top-line loss declines, revenue declining 15, 10, 20, and more percent. And when you find out and start talking to them, they have lost their way. They have, because of the turbulent times, they didn't know where they really were going, they didn't understand strategic planning, nor that they executed or implemented very well. They then lost their way, lost their focus, and as a result had problems. And this study shows exactly what's happening. The interesting thing is, part of the study, they said that strategic planning for these firms that participated, there's about 4,000 or 5,000 firms that participate in this thing. Strategic planning for 2010 is anticipated to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 88%. It's come back up again, Ryan. So strategic planning is people realizing that they need it. So the takeaway from this is 3 points, 4 points. No, I guess I got 5. Can't count too well this morning. Need another cup of coffee. Take a long-term perspective. That, like Apple, like Walmart, like the stalwarts out there, take a long-term perspective. What are you about? What are you doing differently that Michael Porter said? How are you providing that value? Continue to do it. You might change your short-term actions just to get there, but the long-term perspective has to be in place. Be flexible. The rate of change is going to intensify. It isn't going to get any easier. The global world, the global marketplace, with the way information flies around so fast, we're going to have those issues, along with businesses we call them content games. Say the word this morning, but where changes intensify throughout when one little domino falls. And as Cammie said initially at the beginning, it's all about implementing. Take that plan, take that program, make sure that you've got your program to focus on your customers, to focus on being strategic and implement it. Even if you don't have a really great plan, implementation is what it's all about. There's assessing your organization. Assess how strategic are you? How nimble are you? I found a couple different assessments online. They're free and so forth. It would be a good idea to assess the culture of your organization because you have to be agile. being agile and understanding, just like what Spartan does, and as they get comments coming in, if they get a detractor, whatever else, a couple people start saying that, they react, they're agile, and they take those customer comments to heart. With that little last point there, Tammy, if you got a thought that you'd like to add in to this, because I know you wrote a couple blog posts on the Wall Street Journal article, and I know you're pretty passionate about it.
Well, I think, there's definitely points to take away from that article, but one of the main things that I found as far as the reporting went is that it didn't go into any of the implementation or execution strategies of the people that they interviewed. So you really don't know if they had any strategy at all, which is a vital key in the whole process. So it wasn't really insightful in that way. So the headline was sort of a misnomer. But at any rate, the fact is that perfection is in the process. You don't have to have a perfect strategic plan from the get-go, something that, you can go ahead and bronze. The fact is that it has to change. It has to change. And if your organization does not have a process in place and data in place that helps you give insight to that change, then you're driving blind. So it's the process. The perfection is in the process. Strategic plans shouldn't be, at the onset of them, you shouldn't try to achieve a perfect strategic plan. The perfection is in the process. I love that phrase. I think it is really important when talking about strategic plans. So that's my input on that.
You are passionate about that. You're going to have to get your a couple more blog posts. Thanks.
Well, I had my coffee this morning.
We'll email you another one. We had some participants type in, a couple participants type in. One of the latest ones that we just got, I think it rings true and kind of adds on what Candy was just talking about there. And it said, I'll read it, it's a little bit long, but here we go. It says, to me, the idea of not doing strategic planning because things change and we need to be able to respond in spite of our strategic plan is like not doing fire prevention because fires happen and we need to be able to respond. Similarly, not responding to a change in the environment because it wasn't in our strategic plan would be like not fighting a type of fire because we didn't plan on having to fight that particular type of fire. We should do like fire companies do. Fight the fires when they occur, work on achieving your vision of the future when you have the time and resources to do it. Wow. Kind of an interesting parallel there, fighting fires. I mean, you got to do them and keep put it out and keep moving forward. We're going to have this.
That's hot.
Yeah, awesome. What else we get there, Ryan? The same person actually was an earlier one, but it kind of tied into what Howard's talking about. I thought it fit perfectly. It said, I think Mr. Schultz's quote makes for a great soundbite, but it doesn't make him right. Obviously, in times of turmoil, increased flexibility and the decision-making are important. And strategic planning isn't about predicting the future, it's about making your future. Don't forget the Alan Kay's quote, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Wow. So two very, very insightful posts by Mr. Glassenberg, and really appreciate it. Well, I know who's going to do the next strategy huddle. Somebody's got really insight. Thanks.